On the organizational side, we're going to roll through a couple of things really quickly. First of all, our live stream policy, we will provide live stream for all of these meetings. Will be able to come by for the members to check in for attendance, and then if you need to go to your office to be on live stream to view, but you won't be able to vote that way. You'll have to be present to vote. Other items I want to mention, I do plan to hold other hearings throughout the session, not just for handling bills. I want to provide an opportunity for the members to be able to learn on transportation topics. Particularly what I have in mind is a meeting more like a lunch and learn on multimodal. So that will be more information will be forthcoming on that. And then last year we did a work session where we allowed all members of the Senate, not just this committee, but all members to come in and have sort of a time of question and answer with your district engineer, the commissioners that are available, Director White, and others from MDOT, so that you can hone in on any questions that you have specifically related to projects within your district. So that frees up time during committee meetings where we're handling actual bills. You'll have that opportunity separate and apart from those meetings to get your questions answered on things that are going on within your district. So I just want to make sure that you do have that opportunity. And again, more information will be forthcoming on that. So with those couple of things, first, before we go into motions, I want to recognize our team for this year. Allison Bradshaw, who's right here to my left, will be our attorney again, and she does a fantastic job. And then Deborah Stamps over here is our committee assistant again this year. I've just got a fantastic team, and I can't be more excited to get the work done this session. Now I'd like to recognize my vice chair, Senator Parks, to make a series of motions to get us organized for business.
I move to elect Senator Andy Berry as Secretary of the committee.
You've heard the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think the motion carries, and we appreciate your service. All right, I recognize Senator Parks for a second motion.
Move to adopt a quorum of 10 members, a majority of the committee, as sufficient quorum to proceed with business.
You've heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries, and I recognize Senator Parks for a final motion.
Adopt the rules of the Senate as the committee rules of procedure, with the exception that a motion to reconsider may be disposed of on the same day it is entered.
All right, you've heard that motion as well. All in favor? Is there any opposition? Okay, that carries as well. Now we'll move into the hearing phase of our meeting. And first, we've got President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. We've got Scott Waller, who also serves as the Vice Chair of the Emergency Road and Bridge Fund. And Mr. Waller is here to provide us of an update on the Emergency Road and Bridge Fund, sort of where we are and what we can expect going forward. Mr. Waller, thank you for taking your time out of your schedule to be here with us today.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for allowing me to be here to talk about this issue. I want to provide a little background and context of what's been taking place. And thanks to the leadership of each of you and the commitment that's been made, we are beginning to see true improvements in our transportation system. Today, I'll be focusing primarily on the positive results of the Emergency Road and Bridge Repair Fund, but also want to take the opportunity to remind everyone kind of where we were, where we are, and kind of what's ahead. In 2016, MEC released a major study that pointed out that 79.4% of the road miles in Mississippi were ranked less than good, about 15% higher than the national average on that. At the same time, the report showed that there were about 4,000 bridges in need of some type of repair, with almost 2/4 of those bridges being at the local level. Then in 2018, the federal government began to shut down bridges that were in such disrepair that they could not be used until they were repaired. Thankfully, lawmakers responded in a very positive way and found ways to improve funding to begin to address these issues. The legislatures used innovative ways during that time frame to put additional dollars at both the state and the local level, including dedicating lottery revenue for MDOT and then sales tax diversion for local roads and bridges. The ERBR fund has played a major role in this process, and it was part of that legislation in 2018. It continues to address needs that we have at the local level, primarily because of the way that it's been administered the last couple of years. But there are still great deficiencies at both the state and the local level, and I appreciate your commitment to finding solutions. So why does this matter? Well, from an economic standpoint, which we represent businesses all across the state of Mississippi as the state chamber, it's really important that we have well-maintained, high-capacity highways, because that issue ranks second only to workforce availability as critical factors considered by businesses who are looking to either locate or expand their locations. So it's important that we focus on the economic impact of a good transportation system as well. So let's dig a little bit deeper and talk about why this really matters. The Emergency Road and Bridge Repair Fund has been very successful, and I believe it is essential that we continue to fund this program. The ERBR Advisory Board was formed as part of the legislation that was passed. It was known as the Mississippi Infrastructure Modernization Act, and it was done in a special session. As I said, right after all the bridges were kind of listed as, hey, if we don't do something, we're not going to have them. The advisory board is made up of representatives from all sectors of the economy, which I think that's important because the representation that we have there is vital. It is chaired by Mike McCormick, who is the president of the Mississippi Farm Bureau. Mike could not be here today, and as vice chair, he asked me to stand in, and I have the privilege of doing that and working with him and the other members of the committee. The advice the advisory board gives to the Mississippi Department of Transportation is non-binding. I think it's important to point that out for this reason, because throughout this whole process, MDOT has taken very seriously the concerns that we have listed and listened to what we've had to say about what needs to be done in order to establish the rules to govern the process of spending these dollars and making sure that we're doing it in the most efficient way possible. The board meets quarterly to receive updates from MDOT and provide input into the process. The goal is to use the criteria that they've established to identify bridges that fit that emergency status, the ones that we need to focus on first. And a great deal of progress is already being made, and without question, the financial commitment that is being made by the legislature is allowing this effort to pay big dividends all across the state of Mississippi. It's important that we note that we still have long-term needs we must address. A continued commitment to the Emergency Road and Bridge Repair Fund is vital, while at the same time, it's extremely essential that we're looking at the funding model for MDOT to help us focus on sustainability for the statewide system. There's a great number of needs locally and state level, and the long-term continuous funding that was required will help us address these crucial needs and protect Mississippi's greatest asset, our transportation system. I want to take a few minutes to outline the accomplishments that's happened so far with ERBR. A lot of great things have happened in a short amount of time, and the quick breakdown I'm going to give you will include the per year as to why it's critical, as well as an overall assessment as part of this breakdown from a year-by-year perspective. Altogether, in the 4 years of the program, there have been a total of 281 projects selected for these funds. The ERBR one, which was a $250 million bond that was given in 2019, there were 164 projects awarded. There were 203 bridges that were repaired or replaced within those projects. 195 of them were county bridges or city bridges. Another 8 were MDOT bridges. A total of 217 million was distributed, and then another 23 million was moved into the ERBR2 project, which started 2 years later. I want to make you aware that all but one of those projects is at a very close to or has been completed in the process, and the one project that is still pending is in the process of being awarded. So all of the dollars from that first tranche of money is now being spent. ERBR2, which was in 2021, was 89 million initially, and if you may remember, this came from the COVID dollars, and then they were able to add the 23 that I talked about earlier to that. And as a result, there were 16 projects awarded, 21 bridges repaired or replaced, 15 of them in the county or city, and 6 of them were MDOT projects. 10 of those projects are currently under construction with over $70 million of work under contract. ERBR3 was in 2022, and that was the first year there was a dedicated $1 million that was given to the ERBR program, with the caveat that all of the dollars needed to be spent at the county or city level. In other words, ERBR was now going to focus on the needs that we had at the local level. There were 61 projects awarded in that. There were within those projects, 72 bridges. 33 of those are currently under construction, with about right at 50 million of all money that's already been distributed in that. And then finally, ERBR4, which was the second year last year when y'all did a second $100 million toward this program, resulted in 40 projects awarded with 50 bridges within those projects to be repaired or replaced. And there are already 3 projects underway with about 14 million of it that has been distributed. Quick summary is that's 139 million total that has been dedicated to ERBR, 281 projects, and 346 bridges that will be either repaired or replaced. So the fact, and this is what I think that I want you to understand of why this system is working so well. The fact that we're only 4 months into year 4 and all these projects have been awarded, and as we talked about, there are 3 that are actually under construction at this point, speaks to the effectiveness of the program and the efficiencies that MDOT has done, the value of ERBR's advisory group in helping address these issues within the local road and bridge system. So the fact that this is in place and working shows how quickly things are able to move forward now. The continued funding has allowed for the process for applications and awarding projects to move much faster and getting the dollars allocated and those projects underway. As I mentioned, years 3 and 4 are county and city projects only, and the funding is coming directly from the state. And the reason it's important that we look at the funding coming directly from the state is year 2, federal funds were used, and there's certain requirements that you must follow and that must be met to use those federal funds that aren't applicable when you're using state dollars. And as a result, it's not as efficient. It doesn't move as fast. It just takes longer. So therefore, if we're able to use state dollars, we're able to move these projects much quicker through the process. The approach taken the last 2 years, led by Chairwoman Branning, in dedicating those dollars is truly making a meaningful difference. Also, as I said earlier, MDOT has continued to be great stewards, not only great partners in doing this, but they're great stewards in the money and effectively managing this process. Because what has happened is the legislature has allocated a total of $539 million for the ERBR fund. Yet, because of the way that the money's been managed and the things that's happened and interest that's been earned, we're actually going to have almost $552 million available for the program. So when you consider that the average cost of a project within this program is about $2 million, that additional $13 million that's going to be added to the program equates to about 6 additional projects that will be able to be undertaken. The impact of having 346 bridges either repaired or replaced is making a difference statewide, as 80 of the 82 counties have received a project in one of these phases throughout this process. Equally important is the program is putting Mississippians to work. And I think this is where you can really be proud. There have been 47 different contractors that have received bids. So this work has been spread out across contractors across the state. As a result, it's had an impact on Mississippians having the ability to go to work and work on these projects. And one of the things that MDOT has told me is that because there are a good number of contractors that are bidding on these projects, it's helping keep the cost down. And most every contract, every bid that's gone out is coming in very close to the estimated cost of what they've done. So I think it's important that having that workforce and having that contractor pool available is helping us keep our cost at a reasonable level. Also, MDOT continues to monitor these projects to make sure the funds are spent properly, and that's a big part of this whole process. And having that initial criteria that allows us to move quickly has been so important. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that ERBR fund is an important program, and MDOT continues to do a tremendous job, and it's very transparent because they're willing to listen and talk to us about what's going on as an advisory board. Again, as I said earlier, this program has been a success. It's essential that we continue to fund the program and address the needs at the local level. And I encourage you to make funding of our transportation system a top priority this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waller. We're going to ask for questions from the committee. If you'll just stay with us just for a moment. I have a question I'd like to start off with. We just completed, I believe, the 4th year of funding, and I believe the total you gave us was $539 million from 2018 to present. Do you know right off the dollar figure of the applications placed in round 4 versus what we were able to fund?
Yeah, we are still, according to what MDOT has said, we're still somewhere in the request amount of about 700 million a year. So as I mentioned earlier, we had over 4,000 bridges that needed something done to them when we were doing our work in 16. So we made progress, and we're hitting the biggest needs first, but we still have a lot of needs. So we still probably are looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of around 700 million total in terms of applications each year.
Okay.
It was a little larger than that the first year, so it's gone down a little bit, but it's still fairly high.
And certainly inflation plays a big factor in that as well.
It does. Without question, the sooner we can make these repairs, the better. The great thing about a bridge versus, look, y'all have done a lot of great work as it relates to capacity and maintenance on our road system, which is vitally important. But, we get the bridge right, that's going to last for several years, 40, 50 years before you have to. So that's why getting the bridges fixed is so important.
Agree with that. Thank you. Other questions from the committee? All right. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to hear from Mr. Harry Lee James with State Aid Road. He's going to talk to us about a general update on state aid, particularly focused on our bridges and sort of where we are. Mr. James, we appreciate you taking the time to come.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. Can you hear, or I think that's a little bit better. State aid is doing well. We're just starting a new board term. Of course, all county officials get elected on 4-year terms, just like y'all do. So that's the cycle that we actually operate on. Y'all fund us through an appropriation every year to account for what we've done in the past, what we're going to currently do, and what we expect to do, future construction projects as well. So we have to have a pretty big crystal ball to look and see what's out there, how it's going to impact us from many things like Scott was saying, availability of contractors, price escalations, materials, workforce availability, and just all kinds of things that get to us. It's a very manageable program for us. We typically stay under the radar with it. And when I say that, we operate smoothly. Once we get funded, we push it out to the counties, and in fact, the Mississippi Association of Supervisors in their second day of a 3-day meeting today, we're looking at what is coming up in this new board term from different things they have to deal with and everything. As far as I'll say we've got adequate funding. There's never enough funding for what we do for the counties. For the agency, we've got good funding. Our biggest challenge is finding people, workforce. We're down about 10 people. We're still operating efficiently and getting the job done, but it is a challenge finding qualified and capable people to come in and work. People that want to work, for the salaries that we're able to offer. So that's our biggest challenge right now, and then dealing with the normal, I don't say bureaucracy of state government, but procurement issues and things like that, because we are completely different than what MDOT has to face as far as buying vehicles and things like that, and just minor things. So I hope all of you have a copy of this little kind of a timeline that I prepared. I was appointed by Governor Bryant in July of 2018. The big fiasco came to a head in April of 2018. I started keeping records back in 2017 just because I like bridges. And that's what I've done my whole career at MDOT. And so I just had been keeping up with it and just was able to go back and reach back to July of 17 and show you what was out there. I was asked this morning, well, where'd these bridges go when you go from 10,800 to 10,500? Well, a bridge has got a certain definition, and we get way down in the weeds with this stuff about what is a bridge and what is not. You may have what were called three bridges at one time that they possibly were not bridges. They didn't meet the official definition of what a bridge is. A structure that's over 20 feet along the center line. A bridge could have been replaced, constructed and replaced 3 or 4 bridges, along one route line. So it boils down now to program management for us to fine tune what we're doing now to get where we are. What I attempted to do was the kind of a first true record I had was July of 2017. The 2018 numbers, that's when we had 542 closed bridges, and those are some of the ones that MDOT helped close, for the counties, or did close for the counties. And then just starting on, January of 19 was when the ERBR1 went out. 21 was the federal aid funded ERBR program. And then in 22 of July was when the funds actually, in the legislation as it was passed going on through there. And you can see ERBR is a needed part of what we do as an agency in dealing with the counties and dispersing money to them for their road and bridge programs. I mean, I don't say we couldn't operate without it, because for so long we did, but it's an added component to it. Just gives a little one-up extra on there, which you can see. We actually just did a revenue projection to the counties back in earlier this month, and we pushed out, I'd say 478 actually was $487 million back to the counties to use in their board term in these coming 4 years. That's on roads, bridges, whatever, on local and state aid roads. So, and thanks to you and the legislature for funding that for us through Local System Bridge Program, LSBP, now the State Aid Bridge Program. So they've got 2 pots of money to draw from, which they didn't have in the past. And then the State Aid Program, which funds both roads and bridges. So they're seeing essentially it's the same money they had, but it's just presented to them in a different way. And we're able to project that new State Aid Bridge Program revenue out there to them for them to go ahead and program projects and everything that they would not have seen. That money would have accumulated in their accounts under the local system. But by dividing that 5% into 2.5% pots for each bridge program now, it gives them a greater flexibility for doing things that they have not had that opportunity in the past. Any questions about the data that's on your sheet there yet before I go to the next?
Any questions from members? Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the posted bridges, it doesn't look like we've reduced the total number of bridges over this time period, but how many of these posted bridges are are new, and how many have been cleared off of the posted bridges list over the same time period? Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's going to be an awful difficult question to answer because we're inspecting bridges basically daily. And I signed a letter on one this morning to close one. I signed another letter to post one, and then we took postings off of 3 yesterday. So it's a continual process. So as one falls off, 3 more come on it and have to be looked at it. So it's the key to it is replacing bridges. So you're getting newer bridges that don't require posting. That is truly the key to it, because if you look at it in aggregate with the number of closed bridges that we have now in the county, 224, and the number of posted bridges is out there. That's, that's over, 2,000 bridges, right at 2,000 bridges that are out there that are in a deficient condition. Some may not carry a school bus, some may not carry the one I closed this morning, 3 tons. I mean, so, just as we find them, and the deterioration just seems to accelerate the older they get. I mean, it's like me and you, as we age, things don't get any better.
But the state doesn't provide funding for posted bridges. The LSBP program is going to focus on either the closed bridges or the bridges that are in dire repair. Is that correct? Is that a fair assessment?
The LSBP program, Local System Bridge Program, those funds are for only bridges that are on the local system. They have to meet a definition of a deficient bridge that is in statute. Same thing for a state aid bridge, which allowed us to be able to create that last year. It's a new funding formula that was put in place, started in, I think in 2021 21, when the funding was changed from bond funding for the LSBP program to use tax funding as a result of the Infrastructure Modernization Act from the special session, when use tax became available and everything. So it's the past board term is probably not a good measure of some numbers and everything. The current board term, what we have now, just so you can see what we're coming off of. We obligated funds for 125 projects or $75 million. And when I say obligated, that means that the counties put under contract. They took bids, they awarded a contract to a contractor and actively started construction in this past board term, which has started in 2020 and ended at the end of this past calendar year. As far as expenditures for that same 4-year period or disbursements, almost $100 million. Now, that's not the ones necessarily that were put under contract last year, because we were letting projects, say, in June and July of last year, that actually didn't get started until December, and, didn't have a spade of dirt moved on the job until, this year. I mean, that's just the process that it takes to go through to get contracts through from the counties, the contractors, and to us and everything. So it's not an immediate, gratification process that you go through when you let a project and you immediately see a bridge come off a list. It's a very detailed process that we have to go through, or federal highway through the inspection programs that we deal with, to be able to say this bridge is now under construction, or it's even once closed or posted or whatever. And we're dealing with things that we don't own. These are the county's toys that we have to play with. So we have to convince them of doing certain things to ensure the safety of the traveling public as we go through.
Yeah, Harry Lee, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'll continue to work with you on that program, because I know that the LSBP program is very important for a lot of our local governments. Madam Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up based on a couple of questions from Senator Delano. Does your office perhaps have the ability to provide maybe a snapshot of the times when you do assess and close a bridge or reopen, maybe monthly, quarterly, or even annually? That may give us the chance to sort of see what I think Senator Delano was looking for, just to see over time how many bridges you deal with and you move them from the closed list onto maybe the posted list, or up to, just not being load posted at all after they're repaired. And I may not be asking that question properly, but I think we're wanting a way to maybe track the progress of the bridges a little bit better. And we may have to talk about that in a later conversation.
And we do that. We do a computer run of our bridge inventory every Monday or the first day of every week. And I capture that information so I can tell on week to week how many are closed, how many are posted, how many are unposted, and everything. But at that level, we don't get into details, because these are again, within an individual county. Here's a good example. We closed one back in mid-November in a county. When we sent out the letter to close the bridge, we asked the county first, close it to keep it safe for the traveling public, keep them off of it. And then you tell us, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna repair it? Are you gonna replace it? Typically, we hear crickets. We don't get anything from them until they go out there and fix it. And then they get all in a ball of fire wanting us to come out there and re-inspect it. And the inspectors that looked at it are probably in North Dakota right now looking at something. Hopefully they're not there. So we have to schedule those inspections because you want the same inspectors that looked at it initially to come back and look at it again to make sure that they see the same thing and can authorize it to be opened back up. And then we have to load rate them to determine what load carrying capacity they have. Fortunately for this one, it was reload rated, and with the repairs the county made, it got it back up to where it would almost carry a full legal load again. So, it's so many apples and oranges in these crates. It's hard to make a true comparison because we don't look at them. Well, is this bridge, where is it being? We keep up with them on an individual basis in our office for the counties. But as far as globally, we don't see them in that same fashion. We see it as money.
Okay, well, perhaps we could talk about generating a report that would allow the members to know, maybe just on an annual basis per county, what each county is doing. In other words, I think weekly would be a little bit too deep in the weeds for us, but I think something on an annual basis may just help us know where we stand locally. But you and I can maybe get together and talk about that.
And
I appreciate it.
That would be very easy to show you from one year to the next, what a county progress has been made and everything. Again, the ERBR program is a very needed component of that. The one thing though, I'm not part of the ERBR program. I'm not on the board. I don't make the selections. Those are all done by MDOT. ERBR to me is kind of like publishers clearing the house. You got to make an application to win, whereas with the monies that are given to state aid for the county's benefits, that's guaranteed that they're going to get projects out of that and they can move forward and make the improvements. And now with the type program management we've adopted, we try to ensure that they're making those right decisions going forward, which has not been done in the past.
Thank you for that. Are there other questions from the committee? Senator Delano?
Madam Chair, you were going exactly where I was trying to head, and I thought I would do it at a different time. But I think what I would like to see is what expenditures are the counties making to the bridges that are posted, or are the counties waiting for the bridges to be closed before putting their money into it, or maybe trying to wait for state money to come and not deal with a bridge issue until it gets to the point of being closed. And I think it's just more of an accountability, because I know we have some counties that have put a lot of effort and a lot of dollars into maintenance for these bridges. And I would like to at least be able to see how that should impact how we go forward with funding for bridges that have eventually been closed.
I think that's a good question, and we can work together to provide that information, I believe, to the members.
We can, and now I think one reason you're seeing such high numbers on the postings, it's been very constant. It was in the 1,800 and something, low 1,800s here last year and the year before, because there was no direct funding for a state aid bridge program like there has been for LSBP. LSBP collected $127 million last year, a lot more than it was anticipated to have, and it made a tremendous difference in being able to let projects take those off the books. Now with the funding still being collected, and for the first 6 months of this fiscal year, it's collected over minimum each and every month. It almost made $2 million a month last month, just $8,000 per fund. That's shy of being $2 million per fund. So you're going to start seeing with things like the state aid bridge program, another round or two of ERBR that are going to make a difference in this coming term. Y'all be proud of what your counties are doing.
I think so too. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Harry Lee James? Okay, thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming to present to us. Next up, I'd like to invite my friend Commissioner Willie Simmons. He's going to step up and greet us and say hello, give us a brief overview of MDOT. I'd also like to recognize Commissioner John Caldwell, who's also joined us today. Commissioner, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. It's always a pleasure for me to come into this room and to this committee, especially having served as the chairperson. And I did not do any kind of way the kind of job that the current chairperson is doing, because we was kicking the can down the road, so to speak. And Madam Chair, you and your committee and the entire legislative body, along with the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, has done a great job, and we want to thank you all on behalf of Commissioner Caldwell, Commissioner Busman, myself, and having a great leader in Brad White as our CEO, along with 2,700 other employees or so. We are in an ideal position based on what you have done. And last year, in 2023 session, you gave us the largest budget with the federal dollars that we had coming down, along with the state money that you put in our hands. You gave us a $1.4 billion budget. Part of that money was $450 million for capacity projects. The other $100 million for ERBF, and then other funding that you give us through the revenue process that we have. So we are moving the needle, and we're in the position now of being able to move from being a maintenance agency that we have been for over a decade to one where we are now able to do maintenance as well as to do some capacity projects. Thanks to the lottery money that was put in place in 2018, along with the other great ideas that was put into that particular piece of legislation during the special session, we, Department of Transportation, again, is in a great position. So we can't say how much we appreciate you. But in saying that, let me just say quickly to you, because I want you to hear from the person who has the day-to-day operation of putting everything together and who communicate regularly with you, Brad White. But as I get ready to take my seat, let me just say that what you have done has been fantastic. The $450 million capacity dollars that's been put in place. And what we did with that, we followed what is referred to as Vision 21. I think that was passed in 2002 by the legislature. Vision 21 is a great plan, and it's a spin-off of the 87 highway program. But so what we do is we take Vision 21 and we utilize that to help us put together what we refer to as our 3-year plan, that you have a copy in front of you. That 3-year plan is our map, our commitment to moving projects into existence and completing those projects. And the money that you've given us, $450 million capacity, will help us move those capacity projects. And I won't go through them because you can see them listed, county in the year in which they should be falling out based upon the funding. The big thing that we need is that's kind of a down payment on what we need. We need about $8 billion, not million, but $8 billion worth of capacity dollars to build those projects and other projects that will come into existence. We don't need all that money at one time. So any great ideas and great things that you can come to give us recurring money that would give us a good annual income would give us a better opportunity to plan. I think the department is in good hands with the commissioners that we have and the leadership we have with Brad. So we will adequately plan, be transparent, and be accountable with the dollars that you send us to make sure that those capacity projects can be completed. So once again, thank you for allowing us to come, and I will yield my time to the CEO or back to the chairperson.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Director White, thank you for being with us. I believe you're going to talk to us about multimodal and just general overview of the agency.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I echo what Commissioner Simmons says. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come and give you an update on the department and what we're doing, but also for the support that we received from the legislature the last 2.5 years that I've been back at MDOT, I think has been unprecedented. And as Commissioner Simmons said, I do believe that we're beginning to move the needle. We are, while most of the presentations have been about roads and bridges, we are the Department of Transportation, and you helped make us more so that last year by creating a new strategic multimodal investment fund which the legislature put $30 million in, is designed to help us enhance our airlines, our freight rail, as well as the water ports around our state to help assist in economic development and help leverage federal dollars that have been made available through other acts of Congress. And that program has been modeled a lot like the ERBR in that we do have an advisory board that's made up of stakeholders in those different areas that help provide us with counsel and advice to develop the application, to develop the direction of the program. Our staff have had tremendous meetings with this group, and I'm happy to say that we've opened the applications for this program now. I think it goes through the end of this month. And sometime during this session, we hope to be awarding projects from that program and be able to come back to you and give you an update on the progress that we're making and the effectiveness of that program. We're also keeping what I call the old multimodal fund that dealt with these same modes of transportation, but in addition to those also deals with our public transit around the state that has also been used to leverage federal money and make investment in these other modes of transportation. It's been highly successful, and the commission has saw fit to continue funding that as well until the strategic multimodal fund can get off of the ground. So we're happy with the moves that we're making into the other modes of transportation. And as far as our highways and bridges go, I will tell you that 2.5 years ago, when the commission gave me the opportunity to come back, the challenges that we discussed with this committee that the department was facing were twofold. One, we were dealing with a dwindling staff, and two, it was the same problem that most everybody brings to the legislature, and that's the problem of funding. I do believe that with the cooperation of the legislature and the state personnel board, I can't say enough nice things about Kelly Hardwick and his team there. They have helped us stop the hemorrhaging of our employees. And we are working towards amending and adjusting the salaries in a way that would allow us to build back our maintenance forces that had dwindled an awful lot over the years, as well as trying to rebuild our engineering staff. And you may ask, why is that important? Because I know a lot of people believe that it's in the interest of the taxpayer to shrink government. But this isn't my first time at the Department of Transportation. Some of you know I worked for Commissioner Hall back in the late 90s and early part of 2000 after Governor Fordyce had appointed him to the department or to the commission. And at that time, we had maintenance crews in all 82 counties. So if your constituents called with an issue or a problem, or if we had an ice storm like we've recently had, or if we had a hurricane that came to the coast, or tornadoes, or any given emergency or disaster that would take place, we had crews available around the state in each county that could be dispatched to address that in a positive way. But over the years, not moving the pay, we began losing people to local government, to counties, to municipalities, to private sector, to private industry. And now the crews that we have are no longer assigned to just a county, they're covering multiple counties, which, as you can imagine, it stands to reason that that would decrease their ability and their timeliness in being able to respond to the needs of the area as they come up. So being able to move our salaries there have helped us start rebuilding that workforce, which I think will help us respond better to the taxpayers of the state in times of ice storms and hurricanes, et cetera. In regard to our engineering staff, the reason that that's been important to us is because as we lost engineering professional staff, we became more and more dependent upon the consulting firms that come at a higher price tag than I believe we could pay for stuff to be done in-house. Commissioner Simmons mentioned the 1987 4-lane program. When that was passed, much of the pre-construction that went into the building of those 4-lane highways around the state was done internally. The design work, a lot of the right-of-way work, a lot of the inspection of projects was done internally with the department. Now we spend about $70 million a year on hiring consulting firms to help with those various parts of our work. And I believe as we build back the divisions within MDOT with engineering staff where we can pay competitive salaries to build that staff back, that we'll be able to return a lot of that work internally, which will allow us to get more work directly to the projects that we have out there. But the big need that we have and if I leave you with anything today, is coming back down to funding. And I know that seems like a broken record to the people that come before you. But for those of you that may be new to the committee, perhaps it would help for me to explain a little bit about how MDOT works. We're a state agency, but we're a state agency that implements a federal program through the Federal Highway Administration. Every 5 years, Congress authorizes the Federal Highway Administration to carry out its program among the 50 states to build and repair highways and bridges around the country. The purpose behind doing that is so that the industry and the departments and everybody can see what their funding is going to be 5 years in advance and can properly plan and prepare for the work that's being done or that will be done. And several years ago, or many decades ago, the legislature saw fit that to complement that, they would divert a portion of the fuel tax so that there would be a dedicated stream of revenue that could be counted upon, that could be calculated and could be budgeted and could be depended on to match with the federal program to carry out the implementation of federal highways work here in the state. And for decades, that's how that went about. The last time that was adjusted was in 1987 when the 4-lane program was developed. And so for many years, MDOT's budget has been flat. So the taxpayers of this state have an investment in roads and bridges on the state system that are valued at over $66 billion that we have to maintain. To give you something to compare that to, if we were to take those lane miles and lay them end to end, you could build a highway completely around the planet Earth and still have enough roadway left to build a road from Jackson, Mississippi to Honolulu. And with that many miles of road to maintain, we have a budget of around $1.5 billion. And for the last, when I left MDOT in 2006, I think our budget was about 1.2. When I came back, it was 1.2. And thanks to your investment, it was up to close to 1.5 last year. The lottery money has been great. The commission uses that 80 million to rehabilitate the 2-lane highways that sometimes get left behind in our program. But it is time, I think, that we have a serious conversation about how we want to fund our transportation system. Everybody's familiar with the problems that we experienced on Highway 49 in Rankin County before the widening. People that drive through DeSoto County are very familiar with I-55 in DeSoto County. You're familiar with the traffic congestion that we've had on the coast, the safety concerns on I-20 in Warren County. The reason that we have those issues is because about 12 or 15 years ago, the commission, due to lack of funds, had to make the unfortunate decision to abandon the capacity program. And for those of you that may not know, that's the program through which the commission awards projects that are designed to increase the efficiency and safety of our system. That's turning a 2-lane road into a 4-lane highway. That's turning 4 lanes into 6 lanes. That's building bypasses. That's recreating interchanges to increase the safety and the flow of the traffic. So better than a decade ago, the commission, in order to be able to divert as much funding as possible to the maintenance of our existing system, had to abandon that program. And so we went from ideally where we would try to plan 20 years into the future to make sure that we're building a system that can accommodate the projected growth of any area, as well as other factors that would come into play, to becoming completely reactionary in those types of situations. Thanks to, by and large, to Congressman Thompson and Senator Wicker, who supported the last reauthorization of federal highway, our portion of federal money that came to the state with this last reauthorization was increased by about $1 billion over that 5-year period of time. That allowed this commission to restart the capacity program and to relook at these projects around the state that are needed to ease traffic woes and to make our system more efficient and traffic flow more effectively. And so with that and the investments that y'all have made over the last couple of years, we're back in the business of trying to build a system that can accommodate our current traffic. But it's just not going to be sustainable. And I personally feel that the fuel tax is not the only answer. I think in today's economy that we must move toward a more diversified manner of funding the highway system. It's going to have to come from multiple places. And I believe there's ways that you could do that without having to raise taxes. You know, the legislature decades ago chose to divert portion of the fuel tax. There's other diversions that could be made within our existing budget that already portions of which get obligated to transportation-related functions like the use tax, like gaming revenue, that I believe could be used to help plug the holes that we have here. But in the coming weeks, I hope that we can work with you to find a suitable solution that everyone can agree upon that would help us address this. Because I know that in the future, if it goes unaddressed, we will once again be in a position to cancel the capacity program and divert all our funds back into maintenance, which is not something that we would want to do. But Madam Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions or cover anything that I may have skipped over.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. And for the members, I did not mention to you, you should each have a copy of the 3-year plan there in front of you. So I encourage you to spend some time with that, look at it, come to me or Director Wright if you have questions or anything that we can answer for you in that regard. But I will open the meeting up for questions, and I see several. So let me start with Senator Tate.
Thank you. The lottery money, I want to kind of get into that with you. How is that as far as the funding coming in and going out, where it's actually going with MDOT? How is that process going and where is it being used?
When the legislature created the lottery, it was determined that MDOT would get the first 80 million. And that is scheduled to sunset, I believe, in 2028. It's been very helpful. As I mentioned before, when you start looking at the various buckets of federal dollars that we receive and what projects can be funded with that money, the commission saw that our 2-lane highways, which in a lot of your municipalities and counties are the main streets, you know, that go through these local areas, were being left behind. And so this commission and the previous commission made the decision to divert all 80 million of the lottery money to the rehabilitation of 2-lane highways. And I believe over the course of receiving those funds, we have rehabilitated somewhere close to 3,000 miles, I think, 2,500 miles of 2-lane road around the state. There's not been any discussion about changing that. I think that we're going to continue putting the lottery funds to that use. We do hope that the sunset would be removed so that the 80 million would at minimum become a permanent part of our budget. But that's primarily where it goes now.
And I'd like a comment also.
Yes.
Director White, Commissioner Simmons, Mr. Lee, Chairman Branning, I want to tell you something on behalf of Lauderdale County for the last 3-4 years. Thank you for the attention that you've appropriated to us. I just want to tell you thank you. We haven't been looked at that way, given that much attention. So thank you.
Senator Williams, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to echo Senator Tate a little bit, Director White, and just kind of commend you and the team you put around you on what y'all have done the last few years. You just done an incredible lift on what you've done. I know the allocations we've given you have been up, but you've taken them and you put it literally on the ground. So what you guys are doing is tremendous. I've got maybe just a couple of questions speaking back. It's good that we're now back looking at the capacity situation that was kind of on the sidelines for so long. But back to the maintenance issue as we do that, what is the number that we need if we could budget to allow us to do proper maintenance a year? If I did my math right, we've got about 31,000 road miles. Is that right?
Something like that.
Somewhere in there. You know, what are we spending and what's the deficit and what we should be spending to properly maintain that? I know that's probably not an easy question.
No, actually, MEC, and Scott may still be here, sometime back did a study of that. And I think came up with a figure of about $400 million a year that was the deficit of our maintenance funds. That would be just the rehabilitation of the existing system. And I think that it was based on MEC's number that kind of gave birth to the lottery and other things like that, the fees that are being paid now on hybrid and electric vehicles, to try to attempt to decrease that deficit. But what's happened in that same time frame is costs have gone through the roof. So I would say that we're still running at minimum a $400 million deficit in our paving needs. And what you'll see, we probably have about 380 million a year that we put towards the maintenance of our system. And the 3-year plan that you have here, it's important to note that this is a snapshot in time. At the time that the commission adopted that, that gives the legislature a picture of the direction in which we intend to go with the resources that you've allowed us to use. But one of the things that happened, I know a year or two ago with that, the legislature was kind enough to give us 45 million for paving. And that wasn't an arbitrary number. You picked that number because that was the amount of one of the 4 paving programs in a year, what would go towards it. And so the thought process by some of the leadership was, we'll give you this 45 million and that'll let you do another year's worth of projects. And before the bill was passed by the legislature and put in our account in July, cost had changed so that I don't believe we escalated but maybe 2 or 3 projects. It was all of that money was eaten up by inflation. So what you've seen is the amount of money that we're putting into the maintenance is staying the same, but the amount of asphalt being used is going down because it's just not going as far. The number of projects listed in that book are fewer than they were last year because the money doesn't go as far. So it's not just a matter of not having enough money, but it's the need to stay ahead of the maintenance work that needs to be done.
Just one last question, Madam Chair. You mentioned something a while ago, it kind of got me to thinking. You said that 20 years ago, we had crews in each county. Now we don't, and we're trying to rebuild that. Has there been an analysis or study done if having local crews would allow us to stay at a maintenance level where the ongoing maintenance globally goes down? Did I ask that right? You know, if you've got a crew who can go out and deal with the situation more readily, you know, and quicker with the pothole, they might be able to do a temporary repair, which might allow us to have a longer time before we do an overlay. Is there any kind of a correlation or study that's been done there? Just curious.
No, I don't know. The type of maintenance projects that we do comes in and truly rebuilds a roadway.
Right.
I mean, it's a true rehabilitation. So there's quite a difference in a maintenance project like that and a crew that just throws asphalt in a hole. But without question, though, not having the adequate workforce negatively impacts our ability to carry out our mission. I mean, you keep in mind, you know, Governor Barber used to tell the story that when Katrina hit, that the people that were in front going down to South Mississippi, cutting out everything out of the road so the highway patrol and the guard and everybody else could get down there, were MDOT maintenance workers. These were the people that leave their home during the ice storm that just happened. We had maintenance workers that were out on equipment until 3 o'clock in the morning, would go back to the maintenance barn to spend the night because they couldn't get to their house, just to get back up at daylight and get back on the equipment and go back to try to address those needs. And some of them do that for a starting salary of around $19,000 a year. And so that's the reason why we were having such problem maintaining a workforce that would allow us to carry out the mission that we needed. Now, again, I can't say enough. State Personnel Board has been phenomenal to work with. And from the time that I came back to MDOT, Kelly and his team have worked with us in a fantastic fashion to try to address that. And SEC squared is working. And it has allowed us to move salaries to where I think our maintenance workers now, we've adjusted pay by 30%. Now they're still way behind, even if you compare their workers from surrounding states. But we are beginning to move that needle. And so I think without question, it would help us do a better job of carrying out our mission with a complete staff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We should, we're indebted to a lot of people that they're behind the scenes. We don't realize what all they do. So thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Barry, you recognized for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. White, you mentioned the capacity program, and as somebody that travels 49 twice a day down south, I appreciate those efforts. It's literally saved 10 or 15 minutes each way for people that live in my vicinity down there coming to Jackson. But back on capacity, without
new funds or one-time use funds, how long can y'all keep adding capacity in your program?
Well, I mean, we're behind. We're running a deficit now on maintenance funds. So there will be metrics that we have to hit in order to keep our system maintained to a level that passes our federal guidelines and all of those types of things. So, I mean, I think that within the next few years, within this term, we would be faced with a decision, or the commission rather would be faced with a decision of canceling the capacity program in order to redirect those funds back into paving and maintenance. Now, here's the bigger problem with that. We're only putting 115 million a year into capacity. That's not enough to make a whole big dent in the paving. So even if we do that, not only would you lose the capacity program and we'd lose trying to stay ahead of the enhancements that need to be made to the system, but we're still woefully behind in hitting those maintenance needs. I hope that makes sense. But I mean, I think it's, you know, if costs continue to go as they are, inflation continues to happen, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me in the next couple of years that we're not faced with that. Yes.
Other questions from the committee? And Chairman Hobson has joined us. Chairman, do you have questions? All right. Well, thank you, Director White. Do you have a question? I'm sorry. Senator Bryan, did you have a question? Senator England, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Director White. And I think you may have answered this. I just want to kind of get it in the form of a question, kind of concisely for you, because you've done a really good job at running through so much here in the short amount of time that we have. Are there any ideas that you have or proposals that the department has that we as a legislature need to look at to help with funding and speaking multimodally there, of course, not just with our roads and bridges, but other forms of transportation? And then also, is there, and I know there's not going to be a direct figure, but is there a range that you're looking at that your department, you know, from year to year, additionally that you would need to meet the goals that you have? I know that's a big question. It might be something you have to get back with me on, but it's just something that I want to know about.
I appreciate the question because it made me think of something I failed to mention. So I think the numbers, if you wanted me to give you ideal numbers, I would go back to what MEC had looked at with a $400 million deficit in the paving and maintenance needs. I think that the capacity program, if we had 250 million a year, that's, and I'm adding the 115 million we currently put in it to that. But if we increase that by another 100 to 150 million, I believe that it could begin cash flowing itself if properly managed. As far as ideas, you know, in the past, everybody's always said, well, let's raise the fuel tax because that's what has primarily been used to drive that and to provide those funds. As I mentioned, I don't think the fuel tax is the answer anymore because I think we have to have a much more diversified approach because I personally don't think you can raise the fuel tax enough to continue making up that hole. I took the Department of Revenue's annual report. And if you ever have trouble sleeping, I'd recommend you read the Department of Revenue's annual report. And tried to look for streams of revenue that might make sense. Not because I think I'm the brightest guy in the world to come up with an answer, but just to start the conversation. You have gaming revenue and use tax revenue that currently the legislature obligates portions of those two funds for transportation-related functions. The use tax, the counties and the cities get 15% apiece respectively. There may be some other portions that are obligated and the rest goes back into the general fund. Gaming revenue goes to similar type stuff, highway sinking fund, which are bonds that have been issued by the legislature or by the state for highway project stuff in the past that are paid off by that. So it addresses transportation related things and there's a big portion of that goes back, that's unobligated, that goes back into the general fund. So we looked at saying, well, if the legislature was to give us the same percentage of the use tax, as the cities and counties get. Last year, that would have generated another $140 million, which would have been a nice plug into the, the capacity program. It would have allowed it then to run itself. The unobligated portions of gaming last year, if I remember correctly, was around 165 million. And so if diversions were created from those two funds to go to these purposes, that would go a long way in helping overcome some of the cost increases and the needs that we have. But I'm not married to those at all. That was just to illustrate that there are answers out there that do not involve a tax increase. And I'm sure there are people much smarter than me under the Capitol Dome that can find other opportunities that may make better sense and may even go further. But here's an important thing that I want to be sure to leave with you. One of the things that we did, thanks to the Legislative Budget Committee staff, is a couple of years ago, we created funds at DFA for capacity, for paving, and one for the federal match, extra money for federal match. And the benefit of doing that is in the past, the legislature would get kind of squirmish about giving MDOT money because once it was in MDOT's hands, how do you make sure that it goes directly to the projects? By having these accounts there, when the legislature now appropriates funds into those accounts or diverts money to those accounts, if it goes into the capacity account at DFA, by force of law, 100% of those funds then go to capacity projects. It doesn't matter who the director is or who the commissioners are, 100% of those funds then by force of law go to the capacity project. Same with the paving and maintenance. Any money that the legislature diverts or appropriates into that account at DFA, we can only draw down when it comes time to award projects for maintenance and paving. And so in addition, hopefully, to some ideas that can start people's creative juices and figuring out what options there may be to create a new funding model, I think it's equally important for the legislature to be aware that there's now a mechanism in place to where you can send the money to MDOT and know that 100% of it's going to a project. And it's not going to be spent on a salary or a building or a vehicle or anything like that. So I failed to mention that, so I appreciate you triggering that in my mind.
Yeah, and I think that, and Director White, I'll say I wish other directors from other agencies would look at the reports and come with ideas like that and understand that too. One other question, if I may, Madam Chair, and this is more specific. So it's even if your answer is I'll get with you on this later is fine, but I just don't want to forget to ask. When you have instances due to inflation or due to whatever reason, environmental issues that pop up when you're doing a project. We have a project in Jackson County on Highway 614 that was two bridges needed to be replaced. We got one replaced. Now we're looking at the other one, and it turns out we came up short. And I think, again, I think it's partly due to inflation. I think it's partly due to the bridge has to be built where the current bridge is because of where this is located and wetlands concerns and things like that. How does MDOT deal with that? I don't see the project in the 3-year plan anymore. So I understand that it's probably because that's being undertaken, but it's not completed and it can't get completed without additional funding. I don't know if your department has a way to deal with that, or if that's something that you turn back to look at the state or the county to provide the additional funding where they can, or how that's addressed.
On our I think I understand your question. On our projects, when funding becomes an issue, obviously the project gets pushed out. I mean, until it can be properly programmed. If there are environmental factors that come to place, I mean, we work with our partners with Federal Highway to solve those problems and to their satisfaction. And until they're solved to their satisfaction, a project may be paused while we work through that. My observation and experience has always been that our staff working in tandem with the feds have always been able to figure a way to move through those. It may not come as quickly as we'd like, but I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's a matter of just the programming. And let me mention that one of the good things y'all did for MDOT the last 2 sessions is the legislature refrain from earmarking our federal program. Being somebody that used to work for an appropriator in Washington, I love earmarks, but I like them outside of our federal program when it comes to the Department of Transportation, because that's a shell game of sorts that we have to play with the money to say this money can fund these projects, this money can only fund this one. And so we've got very talented staff that moves the money around to make sure that we're getting maximum use of the federal dollars made available to us. When earmarks are in that program, it removes our flexibility of moving that money. The last 2 years that the legislature has refrained from earmarking the federal program, our staff have been effective enough in using that flexibility to our advantage that this last year alone, we were able to obligate more than $100 million in federal funds that we were able to get from other states that did not use that obligation authority. So just having that tool in the toolbox of that flexibility has allowed us to better manage the program to where we can try to address some of the needs like you're talking about, that, and hopefully just cause them to be simply a delay in putting it further out in a program.
Yes, and that helps. And I'll say that was one thing I was glad with our chairwoman and last term, the different chairman and chairwomen of this committee on both sides of the hall. I think that was a good decision because, like you say, that was my concern. Was my county is worried about losing money that they have. I'm guessing federally. If they don't get moving with this one particular project. And so I could see where that flexibility has been helpful. And so your last part of that was very helpful, and I appreciate that.
And if you'll help me remember, I'm happy to get with your folks and we can deal specifically with that project.
Thank you. I think Senator Younger, no question. All right. Any other questions? All right, Director White, thank you for taking the time to come to present to us. We appreciate the good job that you're doing. And do I have a final motion? All right. Thank you all.